This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You gotta do it. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome to another episode of Unprecedented TV's Lembit Öpik Live with me, Lembit Öpik. And thanks very much for your increasing numbers. And do please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Doesn't cost you anything. That's on Unprecedented TV. If you can't find it straight away, put my name in as well, Lembit, Unprecedented TV, Lembit. It'll come up straight away. Do please subscribe. Also, thank you for all the very positive feedback we're now getting in the chat. It's a great delight to be able to communicate with you in real time while we're broadcasting. That's kind of important to us as well. So do please carry on doing that. It's just really fulfilling to know that you're up there watching and doing whatever it is you're doing at the same time. Just as long as you're half focused on the show, then I'm pretty pleased with that as well. So that's pretty good. Now, coming up on the show today, we're going to be doing what we, if you're watching this live, what we often do on a Monday, and that's take stock of what's going on in the Ukraine theatre of conflict. Doesn't seem to be going very well for Ukraine, to be perfectly honest. The mainstream media tend to shy away from this. Why? Because they've put all their eggs in the Zelensky basket. But unfortunately, Zelensky's basket is full of broken eggs, and his attempt at winning has turned into a basket case of its own. That's because, as far as I can see, the Russians are very well equipped. They're very experienced, and they're losing a tiny fraction of the number of soldiers that the Ukrainians are losing. It is a bloodbath out there. And my guest, Warren Thornton, will be talking about that. Incidentally, if you want to get the real inside story from Warren, go to warrenthornton.com and you get a whole show, though we do, of course, broadcast half of that show here on Unprecedented every day as well. What's the problem? Well, the problem is threefold. Number one, Russia is out-equipped and out-experienced compared to the amateurish and retreating lines of Ukraine. Secondly, the Ukrainians just don't seem to have the, I don't know, how would you put it, the wherewithal to keep their front lines motivated. There's a certain amount of surrender going on there, which is hardly surprising, because if you're surrounded by drones ready to bash you to kingdom come, you're probably fairly incentivized to give up to what virtually amount to fellow countrymen, which is Russians. If you're Ukrainian and you see a Russian, you're pretty much related. And the third reason is because the West doesn't know what it's doing anymore. Trump is fed up with this war. That's perfectly obvious. He'd rather sit down with Putin and do a deal and make Zelensky sign it. But you've also got the continuing problem that the coalition of the willing, that's this ridiculous thing that, in my view, ridiculous thing that Keir Starmer put together, has done nothing. It's send some money, but doesn't really know what it's up to. They keep having meetings, but they're just committees, really. That's all that seems to be going on there. So what is likely to be happening, and what is this Petrovsk initiative by the Russians? Now, if you're not too interested in the war, you should be, because this is an absolute test case in the stupidity of Western foreign policy. When the United States turns its back on an entire war and says, we'll give you the weapons if you buy them, that's great business for the military-industrial complex across the Atlantic from where I'm sitting. Not so smart for Europe, and probably won't make a difference to Zelensky's chances of winning either. But that's my view. Let's talk to somebody who knows much more about it than I do, and that is Warren Thornton, who joins us again. Warren, great to see you. How have you been?
Absolutely fine, thank you, Lembit. A lot better than Ukrainian soldiers, I fear.
Yeah, it's a terribly dark situation now. I often do your show on a Sunday night live. And when we were recently talking, you had some of the most gruesome and disturbing videos, which we won't be playing on this show today. Though, of course, people can watch them on warrenthornton.com if you go across there. Big picture here. Who's winning?
Russia, and they're winning huge, Lembit. Of course, we're hearing all sorts of nonsense from Zelensky and his pals and the West and the social media giants who go on there. But the situation in Pokrovsk is absolutely grim, and Kupiansk is grim as well. And for a soldier who's seen almost everything there is, especially when you're looking after people in world wars, you know, in wars and in conflict, when you're looking after aid workers, you get to see a lot. But even this is something else.
Now, I was going to suggest that let's start with an actual pictorial indication, which I sort of partly understand, but you can simplify this for us. For those who are watching this live, it's a fairly recent picture of events, October the 31st, 2025. Can you just interpret roughly what this is telling us?
Yeah, so absolutely. So in the red would be the Russian area, and in the yellow will be where, of course, the Russians are fighting at the moment. Now, what they do, the Russians, is they surround, or they make a pocket, a cauldron, if you will, and instead of sealing it, they basically surround it on three sides, and then at the bottom, they tend to make a bottleneck at the top. So all the soldiers are trapped in there. And they learned from Mariupol. This is from the Institute for the Study of War, by the way. So I wouldn't take that map as absolutely bang on, because the Institute for the Study of War is literally run by Victoria Nuland's sister-in-law, of course, who started or helped start the overthrow of the Ukraine government in 2014. Now, the very, very simply, you can see Minorod and Pokrovsk there. There's about 7,000 men left in Pokrovsk. There's about 4,000 in Minorod. And literally, there will be one road open to go in and out of. And they learnt from Mariupol, where the Russians lost a lot of men, round about the same as the Ukrainians, storming the city. They realised that all they had to do was surround it, literally bomb it, cut off all the supply routes, cut off all the food, water, or supplies, or whatever they might want to get, leave a little road open, and they could just pick them off on the way in or the way out. And it's been an incredibly successful tactic.
So if this is a copy and paste approach by the Russians, why haven't the Ukrainians and that brilliant military leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, found a solution to this?
Well, a lot of it is to do with the PR, Lembit. I mean, only today, over the weekend, we had 11 men be sent to their deaths trying to plant a flag in Pokrovsk on the steel mine there, because the Russians planted one. They flew a drone at it, blew it up. They wanted to put their own flag in. They sent 2 helicopter loads of guys in there, and they were all killed within 15 minutes by the drones that were waiting for them. It was pretty awful. But they don't learn from this, because at the end of the day, it's a PR disaster that they don't want. They want the PR win, Lembit. That's why they sent those 11 guys to their death.
Tell us briefly about that. We can viewers can get a more accurate picture of what happened by going to your show or on warrenthornton.com. But give us a brief summary of what this gesture was. And I don't understand how putting a flag on occupied territory changes the control situation.
It doesn't, but what it does do is you can then try and throw that at Washington and go, look, there is no crisis in Pokrovsk. We're in full control. Look, there's a flag flying over the steelworks. So when the Russians actually got in to Pokrovsk, they planted a flag on the sign of the steelworks in Pokrovsk. Then the Ukrainians sent 3 men in with drones, and they then blew up that flag on the top, on the sign of the steelworks. But of course, they lost their 3 drone operators doing it. Well, this time they decided they were going to convince everybody that everything was okay in Pokrovsk. So they went to a place called Pavlorad, which is about 90 kilometers away. they got 11 silly Ukrainian souls to agree to go in and do this stealth mission where they were going to go and plant a flag and make their way out. Well, it was never going to work. The Russians were waiting for them. 2 helicopters flew in, 5 in one helicopter, 6 in the other. Both helicopters were brought down. We believe that they had American mercenary pilots because, of course, they were Black Hawk helicopters. They were brought down, and literally the Russians with these drones literally polished off these 11 guys in the space of about 20 minutes.
On your show, you've got some pretty graphic representations, well, actually video of what happened. Yeah. Quick question. How can we be sure that it's not fake video?
Very simply, because they're from Ukrainians. And this is a problem that Ukraine have. They will try and spin this left, right and centre. But once again, this is another disaster like Kursk, which was an idea that was put forward by British intelligence, the same as going into Krinky. Now, Krinky is a little place just across the river opposite Kherson, and they tried to take a little landing area there. It was only a tiny little village. They lost 2,000 men. They've already lost 10,000 men in Pokrovsk. They're about to lose another 11,000 with minor rad pulled in. So that's going to be 20-odd thousand.
So in terms of that map, the two circles we're looking at are the one at the bottom in the middle next to the word Pokrovsk, and then the big one, the biggest one actually on the map, minor rad. Why are these places important?
Okay, so very simply, minor rad is a feed for Pokrovsk. Now, when the battle for Avdiivka was going on, which was a while back, this is a central railway hub. As you can see, that line with the little crosses, the little ticks going across it, that is a railway hub. Now, that was a central railway hub for the Donbass. When there were fights going on in all other places, Pokrovsk was seen as the railway hub that would supply all those places for those battles going on. Now, once Pokrovsk is taken and Minorad, to the east is a place called, very simply called Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. They're the last two big, shall we say, towns and cities that are in the Donbass, in that region. And then the whole of the Donbass would have transferred literally to Russian hands. And if you were then suddenly to go left, as you can see where that blue is there, at the very top of your map, that is where the massive, shall we say, interweb of Ukrainian trench lines finishes. Once they get beyond that, they are in behind the Ukrainian defences, which was this huge line of an intricate network and spider web of trenches. And once they get beyond that, then they can either push straight up north, or they can turn west. And there's very little apart from one major city called Pavlograd, which is in the way, and then they will be at the Dnieper River. And then, of course, the Ukrainians are in literally a position which can collapse at any time.
Why? And why is the Dnieper River so special?
Well, the Dnieper River also has not only Dnieper, but also Zaporizhia further down on that river. And, of course, if those two cities go, and, of course, then they can just filter down to Kherson as well, which is, of course, on the Dnieper as well. So you've got three major cities that make up most of Ukraine. And, of course, that means once they're on that river, they can start moving down that river as you do. And, of course, the main waterways is an arterial waterway to move along. The Russians don't have to worry too much about any Ukrainian aircraft because there isn't that many about.
So do they already have air superiority, the Russians?
Oh, massively so, yeah. And what you have to remember as well is they can also fire 20 times more shells than the Ukrainians can every single day. They can send more drones. They can send over 1,000 drones into Ukraine every single day without fail, and over 150 shells. They can send, over 150 missiles per day, as well as 1,000 drones. That is, and eventually that just overwhelms your air defenses, Lembit.
Yeah, no, that seems a little bit tough because we keep being told that the Ukrainians are holding their ground. We were looking at some of the news reportage, that, oh, it's all okay, it's all fine. Well, here's one: Ukraine war briefing. Ukraine says its troops still holding out in embattled Potrovsk. Ukraine military says it's improved positions in several districts, while Moscow says its troops aren't closing in on Ukrainian forces. It sounds to me that you believe the Russians before you believe the Ukrainians.
Oh, well, they are telling the truth, but they're not telling the whole truth, because what happens is the Russians go and take a position. The Ukrainians are then forced to try and take that position back, because, of course, it's a big PR loss if they do not. And, of course, very simply, they commit a load of troops towards it. The Russians retreat, let them take that area back. So, of course, they filled up the same trenches that they've just been wiped out in with more troops. And, of course, the Russians just sit back, preserve their troops, and they just keep pounding them and wipe them out again. So the situation is fluid, but it's literally the Ukrainians don't learn. They leave a gap open so that the Ukrainians can pour troops in to try and relieve these beleaguered soldiers that are surrounded. And, of course, they get picked off on the way in. And once they're inside, they've got very little, shall we say, ammunition, very little food. They're in the same position as the guys who are already in there. And, of course, half of their unit has been wiped out on the way in, and they've now got to get out along with the rest of them, which, of course, is another disaster, because they literally line the road with drones and have it under artillery fire and also planes.
If I understand correctly, that weird Halloween-like netting in the picture is there to stop the drones. Really?
It is, and here's the stupid thing. They spent over 700 million in various areas, shall we say, on netting, and they sent this netting along. And, of course, all you use is one big drone to blow a hole in the netting, and all the other drones can just fly straight into that hole and then just carry along. So it becomes a death trap. Because what happens is the vehicles and the men that are in there can't get out. So they become just an absolute, it's like a spider's web for the Russians. They blow one hole in there, and then, of course, as the trucks or anything else, all the people try to get away, they're stopped by that netting. So they become absolute sitting ducks for the Russians.
That's just nutty. It looks ridiculous. That's not going to stop an army. All you have to do, presumably the stuff burns, but it'll certainly be blown apart. It's so febrile. It's just so weak.
It is. The other thing about that, Lembit, is you have to remember that the Russians now have what they call mother drones. So they go and they use a couple of drones to blow a big hole in one part of the net, and then what they do is they send these mother drones in, which have got 6 or 7 drones attached to them, and they just travel the length of this, dropping drones off as they go, like little limpet mines, like dropping off the kids to school. And, of course, they just sit there and they wait for a truck to come along most of the time. Sometimes they'll fly along and blow something up, but 9 times out of 10, they'll just sit there waiting.
That's really grim. Well, we want to come back to this in just a minute. Just before we go into the break, summarizing the situation in this place called Petrovsk, which maybe many people haven't heard of. What's going to happen there?
Well, it's going to be in Russian hands. It's already 80% in Russian hands. There's a place in the north called Kupiansk, which is very close to falling into Russian hands. There's a river flows through the middle of it called the Oskol River. The Russians are all down the left-hand side of that, or left-hand side. I should do it with that hand, shouldn't I? They're all down the left-hand side of that. And, of course, on the right-hand side, they're now starting to move into there. They're blowing up any boats. They're trying to get out. The Ukrainians are trying to get out along the Oskol River. That's up in Kupiansk, near Kharkiv, the north of the country. And, of course, Pokrovsk is central. That is getting pounded at the moment, and that is a major problem as well.
Hold that thought. You're watching me, Lembit Öpik, here with Warren Thornton, who is an investigative journalist, a former sniper, a military expert, talking about the problems facing Ukraine in its, in my view, rather disastrous war with Russia. What happens next? What about the propaganda? Can you trust what you see in the mainstream media? We'll cover all of those in a minute or two. First, I want to remind you of one of the great shows we have here. Tim Scott does Tim Scott Uncancelled. He's the head of the Freedom Association, which has got half a century of fighting for your freedom of speech, for your independence of thought, for your right to say uncomfortable things. And he often covers news stories which you may not have seen in the headlines. That's Tim Scott Uncancelled. Tim Scott Uncancelled, and you can see the back catalogue of that by going to Unprecedented TV on YouTube, and you'll find them there. A huge archive, hundreds of programs, literally. And if you're interested in sponsoring a show or even having a show, give me a call. Get in touch with us. We're always interested in new ideas. But back to my guest today. That's Warren Thornton, who is a military expert, investigative journalist, and in the Philippines. And the signal's rather better than usual today, Warren. I take it all's quiet in the atmospheric front.
Yeah, it seems to be. At the moment, we're heading into the calmer period, shall we say. When we get to December, it will start to get much better.
Well, in the meantime, it is anything but peace and quiet in Ukraine. And before the break, we were talking about, the hint that things might not be as bad as you're saying in Ukraine. We found another story as well, and this was at a key city, but Kiev says the situation dynamic. The Ukrainian military has claimed its positions in some districts of Potrovsk have improved, despite the city being infiltrated by Russian troops. Now, this pretty much goes along with what you've just been saying. I didn't realize until this conversation that it's consistent for Kiev to say that they're getting land back, and the Russians to actually be winning.
Yes, absolutely. So what Zelensky did was he basically condemned his men to death. He told an absolute out-and-out lie. He said there is no emergency in Pokrovsk. There is no surrounding. There is no cauldron. We are in total control of the situation. Well, if they were in total control of the situation, remember that the Russians were sitting on the edge of Pokrovsk for months and months and months and months and didn't make any move forward whatsoever. And then only about a month and a half ago, they started to make this push through Pokrovsk. And inside the space of 6 weeks, they've managed to control 80% of the city. When you consider how long the Ukrainians have had to build up forces there, it's a pretty impressive effort. But they have learned, the Russians, not to commit a ton of men in there first. Let's literally level the place. And when they're out of water, when they're shell-shocked, when the morale is so low because they've lost so many men, we'll leave a little corridor open for them. And, of course, they'll all scurry away, or they'll send people in. But either way, we'll be able to pick them off. And, of course, that's where the numbers just pile up.
What's happening to the civilians in these places?
Well, the civilians in these places are either evacuated, but if they wait for the Russians, they're seen by the Ukrainians as not wanting to be part of Ukraine. So they're treated pretty awfully. How can I put this as delicately as possible? Sexual assaults and murders are not uncommon.
When the Russians get there, how do they get treated?
They're like conquering heroes because they're treated so badly by the Ukrainians that, of course, because Ukraine are doing this, and in some cases they use mercenary soldiers, and of course the mercenary soldiers know that they're not going to be there, so they'll pretty much carry out all sorts of atrocities. And of course the trouble is when the Russians get there, of course, they've been so badly treated, whether they want to be with the Russians or not, they're now firmly on the Russian side because, of course, the Ukrainians have behaved so badly.
So let's go on to another aspect of it, and this is what's going to save. This is what's going to save Ukraine. What do you think I'm talking about?
I think you're probably talking about the Tomahawk missile, no?
No. Of course not. The coalition of the willing, of course.
Oh, good God! The coalition of the clueless.
There's another example of it. Mark Rutte, who's head of NATO, a man who who diminishes in my respect for him every time I listen to him. He actually literally looks like a Muppet, like the Muppet Show in this picture.
Yes.
and you got these people there. They're just all standing there, securing our future, and you just sort of feel this is just all going wrong. I mean, anything which has Starmer in the middle of it is in the middle of big trouble. Has the coalition of the willing, Starmer's desperate attempt to look like a world leader, done anything useful?
No, absolutely not. Let's be absolutely clear here. NATO, the UK, Germany, all the people who are in it. If they haven't got the Americans backing them, they're going to do nothing. They'll talk, they'll sit around making clever speeches, they'll pledge lots and lots of money, but they are not going to put boots on the ground, Lembit. Let me assure you of one thing here. The Americans are not going to put boots on the ground. If they don't put boots on the ground, neither will the UK, neither will Germany. France might try for Odessa, but they'll get absolutely pounded. Italy have already turned around and said, we're not doing it. And Poland have already turned around and said they're not doing it. And Poland were very much one of the bunch of people that literally, shall we say, the coalition of the clueless were banking on to get stuck in. What they'll try and do is get a small Scandinavian country to go in, someone like Moldova, and then they can go to America. Oh, look, they're picking on Moldova. But they'll start trying to open a second front. And of course, if they can't do that, they'll try and get one of the Scandinavian countries like Finland to go in. But none of them are showing any willingness. The coalition of the willing is very unwilling, Lembit.
And yet they have a time of broadcasting. They have another meeting planned in Spain. This is meant to be a secret meeting. Coalition of the Willing Summit will be held. Madrid apparently to host it. Once again, if you're watching this live, then it's going to be in the week you're watching it. But if you're watching in the archive, you can compare what predictions we make now with the reality. My prediction is it'll do nothing again.
No, they'll pledge money. They'll tell everybody what they're going to do. How they're not going to tell people how they raise it, because it's going to come out of your pension pots and your taxes. Now, here's the thing: is they're going to say they're going to raise money, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. We're going to give them technical support. We're going to give them money support. Half that money will disappear into various bank accounts. Let's not forget Zelensky's just bought a ranch, a huge ranch in America. Yes, he has a ranch in America.
How do you know?
He bought it through the film company he used to have. His various cohorts, shall we say, purchased this ranch for, I think it's something like 90 million.
Right, can you prove that?
Oh yes, absolutely. I'll send you all the details.
Yeah, is that in the public domain?
It is in the public domain. Yes.
That's a bit odd.
I think it's out in Arizona somewhere. It's somewhere out there. It's a ranch out in the middle of nowhere. But it is a huge spread. I think it's 900 odd acres.
Where did he get 90 million from?
Well, I wonder.
Right, be careful there. Yeah, we've got legal advice.
But
if
same places,
£90 million ranch, he's going to have more legal advice than us.
Same place his wife got a Bugatti Veyron from, and where she got her diamond sparklers and everything, a Gucci handbag for £430,000.
Nice work if you can get it. I'll stick to my old beat up car. I want to ask about the Tomahawks. You mentioned it. Trump and Zelensky met once again. It sounds like it was a shouting match. Didn't go very well. And I think Trump just is sick of him. He's sick of Zelensky. He doesn't seem to respect Zelensky at all.
No.
What story here? Talk missiles. Zelensky went all the way to America again because his CO carbon dioxide footprint is irrelevant now. They've lost interest in the climate emergency, I think. So they're there with all these questions. But I'm told there was a shouting match with swearing by Trump, who threw the maps on the floor. What's the real situation? Is Trump going to give this man Tomahawk missiles or not?
It depends how far they want to push it, because there's only one question here, Lembit, and the question is, what do America think Russia's response is going to be? It has nothing to do whether they've got the amount of missiles to give to him. It's got nothing to do whether Zelensky wants them or not. It is if they give them to him, how bad is Russia's response going to be? If it's a response against NATO inside Ukraine, America will give him the weapons. Now, the think tanks are all saying that Russia will hit NATO and they'll hit them hard, but they'll hit them inside Ukraine. So therefore, it is justifiable that we take the risk. But America do not want to escalate this to a point where we get literally, because remember that once you give them these weapons, the last thing American can give them in the terms of missiles will be JASSMs. And after that, you've got to decide whether you're going boots on the ground or nuclear weapons. So it is this very delicate balancing game that they have to play here.
That makes me really quite nervous about it, to be honest with you, because
Yes.
I don't get the feeling that Trump's got any interest in this war.
His war hawks do. It's a military-industrial complex. Would like this to keep going, because while this is keeping on going, they can take over places like Nepal. They can, take over places like Venezuela. The Russians are nice and busy with Ukraine. We can make sure that the fall of Syria happens, and we can also have a go at trying regime change in Iran. So they've got all these irons in the fire, and as long as they can persuade Ukraine and just give them enough to keep them going, they'll keep the Russians busy while they're overthrowing BRICS countries elsewhere.
But at the same time, slightly breaking news, if you're watching it live, there's talk that the Putin-Trump summit might be on again. It'd be interesting to look back on this program in a week or two and see what happens. But after it was on, then it was off. It seems to be coming on again, and I've got a feeling that although there's an awful lot of piffle said, I've got a feeling that this summit is possible. And if Trump gets fed up enough, he might just meet with Putin and force the solution on Zelensky there, who, as you say, seems to have become amazingly rich considering his modest salary. And that could be it.
Okay, there's two reasons why that won't happen. The very first one is Marco Rubio. He's the one who scuppered the deal in the first place. This guy is everybody thinks he's neocon light. He's actually neocon dark. Trump is surrounded by bad people. He's got Vice as his chief of staff. He's got a couple of generals. He's got CIA Director Ratcliffe. He's got Marco Rubio. Tulsi Gabbard was sidelined the moment she turned around and said that, no, Iran haven't got any nuclear weapons anytime soon. She was pretty much drenched and thrown out on her ear, and he's now very much on the sidelines. So, of course, he's surrounded by people who would like to continue wars all over the place. So, and the second thing is they've not been listening. Trump literally was told by Putin in Alaska, and the Russians are very angry about this. He was told by Putin in Alaska that this is happening, and Trump turned around and said, well, okay, so a ceasefire is not the way to go. Then he did a complete 180 and said, let's have a ceasefire. Now, as far as the Russians were concerned, they were waiting all this time to hear that he was going to tackle the three root causes, which is denazification, demilitarization, and no Ukraine in NATO. Well, the first one's a given, but of course, then again, Ukraine was saying, well, we'll decide whether we're going to go in. And of course, there was the land issue and everything else. But it's not the land issue for the Russians. For the Russians, they see NATO as an existential threat, and any forces that are assigned to NATO as an existential threat to Russia's existence. And until they get that into their heads, while they're still going, oh, we can do a deal for this for oil, and we can do a deal with this and swap a bit of land and everything else, all the land that Russia are sitting on is now staying with Russia. That you can take that to the bank.
Well, then I'll express my opinion. I really want them to meet. But I can see that for Vladimir Putin, if Zelensky holds out for more, he'll get less. Because if Putin is doing as well as he seems to be, he'll say, well, I was willing to do a land swap and stop fighting. But if you don't want to do that, I'll just take the land with fighting. Yeah. And so, although it's messier and it'll cost lives, especially on the Ukrainian side, Vladimir Putin's got the power to do it. He's got the resources to do it, and no one's going to challenge him. So in that sense, he doesn't need to have a bunch of allies. Whereas Vladimir Zelensky is entirely playing the beggar's role.
Well, here's what you've got. You don't want America to stop the war. Why would you, Lembit? Very, very simply, Europe are going to buy all their oil from you and not from Russia, where perfectly feasible. And Europe are going to buy all their weapons from you. So that's going to keep the military-industrial complex happy. And, of course, America's going to be coining it in. And, of course, Europe are going to want to be keeping Europe on, to be keeping America on side. So they're not going to complain too much. And, of course, Europe's going to be the loser here. I mean, for God's sake, even your fish and chips are going to go up in price.
Why fish and chips?
So basically what's happened is the EU have now turned around and say that you can't buy from Russian fish farms, which there are many, many of them that supply the EU. So you can expect the price, as one of my friends turned around and said, you must be codding.
Oh, great. No, you can laugh at that. I'd like to apologise to viewers for that.
This is how petty and stupid the European Union is.
It really is ridiculous. I didn't have time to have a look. I meant to. I now remember look at the growth rate in Russia for now, but I bet it's more than United Kingdom. But last year the growth rate was 4% in Russia, with all the sanctions, with all the everything.
Yes.
And meanwhile, we were languishing in the doldrums. It leads me to my last point. Really, we came across a very defiant man with a very big sign that Ukraine will never surrender. There we are. Ukraine will never surrender. I don't think that's true. What do you think?
Well, you've got two choices, negotiation or obliteration. And at the end of this, any war finishes. There's only two outcomes, negotiation or you get obliterated. And the losers, they don't get to choose what they get. You get crumbs from the table, as it were. And very, very simply, Ukraine, while there's something left of it, need to negotiate. If they don't, and let's face it, Europe and everybody else will be pushing them not to, they'll lose more and more men. And I'll tell you something you want to keep a watch out for. To find how ruthless Europe are in keeping Ukraine fighting, you just wait and see. They will start to all those people that they let go, the 18 to 24-year-olds who went abroad, they will start to repatriate them back to Ukraine en masse when the position becomes so bad that the Ukrainians can't put an army in the field. They'll actually send their men back.
They're not going to be able to do that, though. How can they force people to go back?
They'll find a way. It's one of those, Lembit, when you turn around and said, how can they freeze 330 billion of Russian assets? And how can they touch that? Because, of course, it's the Russians' money. You can't be messing about with that. They'll find a way.
Well, I think they backed off on that, actually. I thought they were going to start
only because Belgium stopped them. They were all for it.
I bet you they were relieved, actually, but that's a different story. I've got time to explain that whole thing, but essentially they wanted to swipe money, as far as I understood it, not from Vladimir Putin, just from Russian people. Businesses. Maybe rich people, but Russian people.
Yes, they're basically. So the idea was to seize all this money. What they didn't work out was that 230 billion worth of assets are still sitting in Russia. And of course, once they did that, once they stole that money, then nobody would ever invest in Europe again because they would turn around and go, well, when's it our turn? If they get annoyed at us, they'll freeze our assets as well and then steal our money. So, of course, nobody would then invest in Europe whatsoever. So all round, it's a very bad play.
Okay, so last word to you in terms of the big picture, and then I'll ask you more, Thornton. How do you think this plays out in terms of the immediate next week or two? Is Russia going to get all those juicy places that are strategically important to Ukraine?
Yes, by Christmas, Kupiansk and I would imagine Pokrovsk. Now people go, But I'm always, you have to clear a place completely before it's completely under control. People go, oh, well, why not? The Russians are very methodical. When they take it, they don't want to give it back. So by Christmas, Pokrovsk, Kupiansk will be in their hands, possibly Siversk, and possibly another couple of small towns as well. And they will be getting ready to make that punch through the last of their lines. And then, of course, they'll make a hook to the east, northeast, and they will surround Kramatorsk and, of course, the other places that they need to take in the Donbass. So more Russian victories, more pain for Ukraine, more money for Ukraine, more rhetoric from NATO, and more nonsense coming out of the Trump camp where they say we're going to give them this or we're going to do that. It'll be a game changer. Every time they give them a brand new weapon, it never changes anything. The Tomahawk is no better. It can travel further than a Storm Shadow, but in essence, it's no better than a Storm Shadow.
Thanks so much, Warren. Where can, apart from the fact, of course, we play out the first half of your show on a daily basis here on Unprecedented TV, where can people get the full show?
People can find it at Patreon. They type in, go to Patreon and type in Warren Thornton, or at warrenthornton.com, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. GMT. And, of course, on Sunday nights with the wonderful Lembit Öpik from Unprecedented TV. 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Thank you so much. That's Warren Thornton at warrenthornton.com. And do please subscribe to Unprecedented TV on YouTube. You'll find us at Unprecedented TV. You can put my name in it if you want to save a bit of time. Lembit, Lembit. You get straight there. It's just spelt the way you see here on the screen. Hope you find that interesting. In summary, Warren reckons that Ukraine is losing lives, losing ground, and potentially losing morale. Russia and its war machine just keeps trudging slowly on through the ever colder streets and fields of Ukraine. If you ask me, the outcome of this war was settled before it started. Ukraine could never win it. And the three demands made by Russia have never changed. I hope, my opinion here, that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin can come to a settlement. I have no expectation of Volodymyr Zelensky having any significant role in that, because he who pays the piper calls the tune. And Donald Trump has been, or at least Americans have been, paying Zelensky for his war. And Europe has done a lot of talking, but not that much investing. And as Warren says, and I agree with him, I don't see any European leader being willing to put up with the bad PR of body bags coming back to their particular European countries or the UK with no progress in Ukraine. As such, I think it is time to negotiate. Is that a surrender? I don't really care, because that surrender, if it came, would stop the loss of life. Thank you very much for watching. Do please enjoy the other shows. Go to the archive as well. Have a look for yourself. Unprecedented TV on YouTube. And do let us know what you think. And also happy to have a chat with you on X. Go to @Lembit Öpik, where you'll also find these shows. Maybe that's where you're watching it. Lots more coming up this week on the show. And one last thing for you. We're dead serious. If you've got ideas for shows, you let us know, and we'll see what we can do for you. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live here on Unprecedented TV. Have a good day.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages.